in 2019. This is a step that we would normally do about halfway through the morning. We are doing it a little different this time, obviously, so hopefully it still works just as smoothly. And it takes anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes when we are in a room together, so I'm hoping that it will be a similar time here. For those of you that haven't participated in this before, this is step 2 of this year's council priority process. So the first step was that you all participated in was to brainstorm some ideas that we've taken and organized into categories. You should all have those, both the list of ideas and those categories. That's what we'll be using to go through this conversation today. The goal of this conversation today is to feel comfortable moving forward with the list of categories as something that you could vote on, city councilors, as a priority. So we might need to reorganize the ideas into new categories. We might need to just rename the categories so that they have more meaning for you. Or we might need to add a category that wasn't brought up in the brainstorming because it's something that you want to see on your priority list, but it's not there for you to select yet. So that's what we're going to go through today. Is just first we'll hear from the city councilors about where you're at on the list, if you have any questions about things, if there's anything you think is missing. And then staff can also spend a little time talking about that. And just a quick preview of the next step, when this list is ready to go, we will disperse again and do individual exercises where we'll make you make some choices about which of these you think are important. There's a few different ways that we'll do that, but with the idea of some sort of forced choice exercise where we'll rank them and look at the rankings and decide if it makes sense, and then the council can use that to craft their final list. Ready to go? Okay. Michael, why don't you say what you want to about the list of categories? If you have any questions about the comments, if you've got any suggestions about the list, or if you just want to say anything about it.
Yeah, obviously this is all new for me. I felt like they were covered, like we were covering all of the things that I could think of that needed a category. So I was, I was satisfied with what we've come up with.
All right, thank you for that. Kelly? You're both muted and dark right now, Kelly.
There we go. I'm having computer trouble. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to look at the list. I saw Patrick sent something this morning, and I walked in the door at 10 to 12, and my computer is struggling. So I really have not had a chance to review the list.
Okay. We'll move on to Jay, if you have any comments you want to say about it.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. It was interesting for me to see the comments that came from the department heads, because the things that stick out to me are not things that, I don't know, maybe don't have as much room on the ground, so to speak, as to what what the folks that are doing the actual work can see. So I was pleased to see all of the breadth of comments that came from the department heads, and the categories I felt captured a lot of it. Looking at that list made me think of a couple of other things that weren't on the list too, but we'll get to that later, I suppose. So that's all I got.
I think now is a great time, Jay, if you want to suggest some items that could be on the list.
Well, give me a sec, because I'm just like preparing to take my lunch break. So I've looked at everything, but I'm not in a good place to dig stuff up right now. So
we'll come back to you. All right.
Yep, I'll make sure it comes back.
So staff who've participated. It's a good thing for us to get the staff involved because of just exactly what Jay said. They often have a real direct connection to the work that's being done by the organization. One of the risks involved in going through a process of council priorities is that there often are conversations about overreach and do more than we're capable of. So I think our list is a good one for paying attention to a lot of the current events, but also paying attention to the real core services that the city regularly provides. Craig, what we're doing is asking city councilors to offer their comments on the list of priorities with the goal of making sure that the things that you would be wanting to vote for as their top priorities are on there, making sure that the list makes sense. If there's anything you want to add or change the name of or ask questions about, this would be a time for you to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Department heads, anybody have a burning desire to ask a question or make a statement about any of the things on the list?
One question I have is the word's been used so much lately. The word is infrastructure. There's people that think daycare's infrastructure to drinking fountains are infrastructure. What are we considering infrastructure on our worksheet here?
That's a good question.
I know that I put that, Tom. So I guess for me, I'm talking about our roads. I'm talking about utilities that lie under the roads. Obviously, all of us know there's certain streets we can pick around here that are in not very good shape. We have a couple of streets, avenues that are gravel, not in very good shape. So those were the things that were at the priority from my mind when I used the word infrastructure, if that helps a little bit.
Well, that helps where you're coming from, and that's what I suspected from you anyway, but the word in the whole country has been grown to almost include everything from A to Z. And I would like to see it, like, what does it include for us? Like, to me, it's the water, sewer, electric, roads. The rest of it to me is not infrastructure. It's other, whatever, other buildings or assets. But to me, that's not infrastructure. And when we talk about infrastructure and CIP for infrastructure, those to me are those core requirements should only be considered infrastructure.
So answering your question, Tom, I don't think it's necessary right now to select that as a priority. I think each of us can hold in our head what we want it to mean still. When we talk about capital improvement planning, that if that's selected as a priority, then what I would imagine us doing this year is holding a workshop where we talk about what capital improvements we want to do and basically kind of go through this same exact process where we'd be brainstorming, we'll be looking at condition assessments, we'll be looking at maps, we'll have conversations about projects, and then we'll take a step back from that and talk about kind of the question you're asking. What are the things, how do we choose between the things that we could choose to put on our capital improvement plan? What are the characteristics of them that make them important to us? So we don't really need to define it now. We'll get a chance to define it as a group when we do the capital improvement planning update. And I think leaving it as an open question now is important because it's hard to do. You know, we're still talking about buildings. Is City Hall infrastructure or not? I don't know if it really matters. You know, it's something that we have to take care of, and it's something that needs to be done, and it's something that's been on a priority list. So hold on to that thought, everybody, for now. Hi, Anton.
Hi, sorry.
If you have any comments about the list of categories that were sent out, or any questions about them, or anything that you were hoping to see on there that isn't, this is now what we would like to hear.
I think I'm happy with what's on there as far as seeing where we go with that.
I think this process of council priorities is really a simplified one this time, because when I look at the list from 2 years ago, what I imagined was going to happen after we go through this process is that it's going to look very similar. And there might be a thing or two that drops off and a thing or two that gets added on, but we're still in the middle of working on some of these priorities. And I guess I haven't heard or seen any indication from the council that what you said was important 2 years ago isn't anymore. So I don't want to overthink this. If there's really nothing else people want to say about that list, we will be contacting you all with instructions on how to do the prioritization exercises in the next couple weeks, with the goal of having the council look at the results of that at their meeting on June 9th, and potentially then select what they want to have as their list of priorities on June 9th. Does that make sense to everybody? Are we comfortable moving forward? All right.
Kind of froze for me. I don't know if that was for everybody, but it froze for a little bit while you were explaining that, so I didn't get the whole picture.
I don't know that I saw a lot of head nodding, so I think it might have just been you, Jay. If you're comfortable with the list, then we're going to be done, and we'll send out in the next couple weeks what to do for prioritization exercises. If you want something on the list that's not there, this is still a chance to say that.
Can we ask any questions about what is on the list if we want people to better define some things?
Absolutely.
I think I briefly saw, I'm trying to update my other computer so I'm on my phone, but I think it was Chris that had better wages for employees. And my question to that was, is it overall everyone that you're looking at, Chris, or are you thinking of starting wages for every position, every category? Can you define it a little bit more?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
No, I can't. Okay. Yeah. We got 2 applicants for the liquor store position. I just don't think 14 and change is a very enticing starting wage, considering what people can make elsewhere these days. We're really short-staffed for this summer. It's very worrisome, and I just kind of feel like we need to bring that entry point up some. I mean, I know the liquor store used to be the best paying cashiering job in town, and now it's, it's not even close.
So with that,
That's what I was meaning by that.
okay. And I'm wondering, and maybe it's something we talk about later, but with that, do we need to, is it just that we have to change that wage to try and entice people? I know lots of people are doing that and adding on. Some are doing sign-on bonuses. Some are doing bonuses if they stay for the whole summer. Obviously, we have a union to work with. So those are things that we have to contend. Are there things that we can change about the position? Things to think about anyway, not that we have to answer today, that would move it up. An 18-year-old untrained person, other than learning some things, can come in and step into that position, I feel. I'm not saying
For sure.
But are there things that we could do to add it to a higher starting point or not? And how do we, I guess that's something that we work with on Mike, is to how do we look at these positions? If they're all rated the same, what are things that we can do? I don't think 2 applicants is unusual. I will say, I know the county highway department for the last 5 years, has had trouble finding people, and they start over $22 an hour with a full benefit package and great vacation PTO holidays. But obviously, as everyone knows, we are struggling to find employees in this community. So I guess what kind of things can we think of too that might change that around? Or how do we operate differently if we can't find employees? Just some brainstorming, obviously not solved today.
Well, if we can't find employees, we can't be open as much. Plain and simple.
Yeah, Kelly, and that's under that same category of human resources. That's when I talk about park contraction and downsizing, that's that same idea of like, we don't have enough help to be this big and this active and have these long hours and additional duties outside the park, and this sort of coming to the reality of the fact of our human resources very limited and very hard to affect, and we need to start scaling back.
So again, Dave, I'll pick your brain a little bit to understand. I think we all know the problems, but when you say we don't have enough help, is it that we need to expand the number, or is it that you can't fill the positions you currently have?
Well, both. I mean, we've got some nice like youngsters up and coming, like very young. We saw some energy from the 14-year-olds, but they can't drive. They can't, operate riding mowers. Like they're going to be good maybe in 3 years, but right now we have the same problem Chris had with, lack of applicants, lack of appetite for the positions. We're down a custodian, a longtime custodian didn't return, and we're feeling that with our maintenance workers. So we're all pitching in to cover that. And yet we've got some pretty senior maintenance workers that'll soon retire. And the same at the golf course. We have Twinkie up there is, the bread and butter of the maintenance department. And if and when he retires, we're just critically short. And the ability to hire isn't a reality right now, or it's gotten worse and worse and worse. And my thought future forward is, let's scale back. I know it sounds impossible, but let's close the bathhouse and take 100 sites off the inventory, and let's have less work to do.
I'm going to finish out with it and then we can move on. I honestly believe that that's another work session for us to sit down with administration and department leaders and have those discussions about how much staff are we missing? Where do we need to make changes to accommodate you so that you can provide a good service? And if a good service means the liquor store is only open from 11 until 8 p.m., or if the park has 300 sites, not 350, and we have 3 bathhouses, but they still have options of 3 clean bathhouses to use. I'm sure Tom has things he could suggest for his, or Lenny, but I think that's a whole nother work session that we need to talk about separate, almost from this priority. It is a priority, but I think it deserves its own category, truthfully, in its own time.
Well, I think, Kelly, you've hit right on it. There's parts of this that the council can help with, and parts of it that we don't need any council attention to deal with. So like, how many part-time employees are there at the liquor store isn't really something that we would ask the council to help with. If Chris wants to add another part-timer, he will. The budget for how much we have to pay them is what we talk to the council about. But if we've got 6 and we want 7, we'll just hire another one. But what we do need the council's help with is, are we going to shift our payroll system in a way that prioritizes those entry-level jobs so that we can fill them? And what are the budgetary implications of that? Or are we going to offer a different benefits package than we do? Or are we going to stop hiring part-timers and hire more full-timers and absorb the cost of that? Or those strategies, the bigger ideas of how do we try to deal with this? Or are we going to offer less hours and adjust the services that are being provided? Those are all things the council can weigh in and help with, and we need them to make decisions about. And when you say it's its own category and it deserves its own work session, that to me is exactly what we're asking you to decide right now. What are the things you want to spend time on, and what are the things that are less important to spend time on? And there's more things that you want to spend time on than you have the ability to spend time on. And so that's why we have to ask you to prioritize them. And it's absolutely important. And whether or not the council picks this category as one of their priorities, there will be things that we will be doing about it anyway, just because operationally we have to. But we may pick that for something you use to spend your time on this year in work sessions, but you may pick something else instead. And we'll just have to wait and see how it plays out.
Well, I agree. In the meantime, because I think there isn't anybody here who's not aware that I'm big on personnel and HR and communications, if there's people that have thoughts or want to reach out to me or pick my brain or let me just listen to you vent and you want me to come and sit, or I don't know what do the other counselors think. Life is busy, but I certainly am willing to listen. And I know that a lot of places, pretty much every Cook County business, including where I'm employed, is struggling terribly. And sometimes bringing all the hats to the table, even I don't want to micromanage, but I do want to bring all the hats to the table to come up with the best options that we can have, both to serve the public and to serve our employees. So I'll just leave that there, and the door is open for you all to reach out.
But I think that there's likely other things on this list that are maybe some underlying circumstances of why those positions can't be filled, and what the city's role in solving some of those problems are. I mean, it seems to me that the municipality is a good spot to have a job with benefits, and it's secure, and but if those wages don't match with housing that's available, or there is no housing available, there's all of these things maybe not all of these things, but a lot of these things tie together. If we were talking the enterprise funds for the city, which do huge things for what the tax, property taxes are in the city, if we have to cut back at the park because, 50 sites, like that impacts, obviously what our tax revenue, or what our revenue is on the revenue side of our budget. And same with Chris at the liquor store. It's I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I know, like, I'm super excited about Sawtooth Bluff thing, but the idea of that, and like what Dave's saying, I mean, the idea of expanding upon their responsibilities when they don't have the capabilities to do that, it really shifts that, to me, where some of those resources have to go, and where our efforts go to try and, I don't know. It's there's a lot of implications in the decisions that we make.
It's good to recognize that challenge, the idea of we're likely going to add one or two things to the list that weren't there before. And at the same time, we're talking about maybe not being able to fulfill all the current duties we have because of our staffing issues. On the other hand, maybe this is an area where we need to grow a little bit. And, we get stuck in seasonal part-time help doing a lot of these core functions for us. And it's hard to hire seasonal part-time help. It's easier for us to hire the good jobs you're talking about, full-time with benefits jobs, but we don't necessarily have work for them to do in the wintertime. So we can't, we're not just an employment program also, but what if we did add a whole new area that we were responsible for, and suddenly it did make sense for us to have a full-time person? Or what if we did find a place for partnership with the school or the county or somebody else in one of those spots like Sawtooth Bluff, where somebody had room for a new full-time employee, and that was a way for us to add resources to the issue. And I don't know whether that's what's going to happen or not, but it's just good to think about how all of these work together, like you're saying. All right, Jay, last call. Anything you want to add to the list?
I looked through the list, and I think that most of those things are captured in good enough detail that I don't need to elaborate much on it. I do really appreciate what you just said, Mike, and I do think that that's something the council and department heads, I do think that we have to start thinking outside of the box, both so we can meet our current needs and so that we can be prepared for needs in the future, because we don't know if we're going to be getting back any international students, and we've relied on those heavily for a lot of things in town, and a lot of economic drivers in town are changing. So I do think that it might be a priority to sit down and think really deliberately about how can we match not just our pay scale, but also our investment in housing and other such situations that allow people to live here so that we can continue to meet our needs, I guess. I don't know. It's a partially thought out, thought, but it seems to make sense in my head. So anyway, that's for the future more so.
All right, this is good conversation, everybody. This is exactly what we needed to do. Just kind of mess around a little bit in our list and talk through some ideas of what's going on in our head and just get the juices flowing, but not get too far down the road on any of them, because obviously the whole idea is they're so important that the council would say they're one of their 6 priorities or 5 or 8 priorities that they need years of our time and attention to really deal with. The next step we're going to move on is the forced choice exercises. You're supposed to be frustrated by this. So when you do what we ask and are forced to make choices that you don't like and you really want to pick that next one, but we're not going to let you, that's the exact feeling we're looking for. And that usually actually works out to give you a very good list in the end. But if it doesn't, we have other tools we can use to dial that in for you. So just prepare yourselves mentally for that. The next step, we want you frustrated.
Say, Mike, could you recap the list from 2019 or 18, the last list?
We sent a memo out with it. I'll just resend that to you, Dave. It's not on the top of my head.
Yeah, thanks.
Although, there's only one item on it that we're clearly done working on, which, not that it's done, but that we're done working on, and that's Highway 61. All the rest of them could potentially still be relevant.
And then my only final thought on this with categories, our golf operation, I see it, intermixed with infrastructure or with improvements, capital improvements, quite a bit of stuff there from Paul. Is it worth putting golf into a separate category on the left versus the individual projects that Paul has drawn out?
I would say yes.
Well, if a city councilor is thinking to themselves right now, I would vote for golf as a top priority on this list, then the answer is yes. If a city councilor isn't thinking about that right now, then I would say it's where it belongs. Okay. If we get through this next step and the list is done, then that's it. We've got our marching orders, and we'll begin putting plans together for you to look at on how we're going to accomplish this stuff. If we get through the next step and it's not quite right, then we'll go back a step or two and work on it until we like it. Thanks for your lunchtime, everybody, and have a nice rest of the day and week.
Yes. Take care, everyone.